Hello everyone. So today I will be talking about speaking tree. Speaking tree is a popular spiritual self-development column that appears in the Indian newspaper, The Times of India. It is a section dedicated to exploring topics related to spirituality, philosophy, mindfulness, personal growth, and well-being. So today's topic is Flummoxed by Flatlines, Sci-tech, and Bucket. Flummoxed, confused. Flatlines, when a patient's heart stops beating, the electrical activity on heart monitor or brainwave monitor becomes a flat, and straight line with no peaks or valley. This flat line on the monitor is referred here flatlining. So birth is never an ambiguous state. Ambiguous, that is unclear, open to multiple interpretations, has more than one possible meaning, describes situations, statements, expressions that lacks precise or defined meaning, leading to uncertainty, confusion about their intended interpretation. So birth is never an ambiguous state. Clearly, you are born when you emerge from your mother's womb, alive and hollering to shout loudly. As you come into contact with the air outside, date and time are recorded, and you begin to smile, sleep, drink, cry, and so on. You are alive, but this is not the case with death. Or death, for death is ambiguous, uncertain, indeterminate. Scientific advancements have only made determination of death even more confusing and complex. So the passage is contrasting the clarity of the birth process with the ambiguity and complexity of the death. It explains that birth is a straightforward and well-defined event, where a person comes into existence when they emerge from their mother's womb and begin to exhibit signs of life, such as crying, breathing, interacting with the world. The date and time of birth are recorded, making it a clear, definitive event. On the other hand, death is described as ambiguous, uncertain, indeterminate. Unlike birth, there is no signal, universally accepted definition of death. Scientific advancements have made the determination of death more confusing and complex. Various factors including brain death, organ function, and vital signs can be considered to determine death. And these criteria can vary depending on cultural, legal, and medical perspectives. The passage highlights the challenges, debates surrounding the definition of death and how it has evolved with medical advancements. The distinction between life and death may not always be clear-cut, and the different criteria can be used to determine whether a person is alive or deceased. The ambiguity surrounding death reflects the profound mystery of this inevitable aspects of human existence. So we go further. At the end of life, when exactly can one be declared dead? Are you dead when your brain stops functioning, or your heart ceases to beat, or you no longer breathe? when the monitor in the intensive care unit displays a flat line with a hum. How do medical doctors define death? A recent write-up in Nature magazine reports that you could be dead in California but alive in New Jersey, referring to the different parameters used to adjudge to announce a decision. Adjudge if a person is dead or alive in the USA. Very often the law lags to make a progress slowly that you are behind other people. So the law lags behind Sci-tech advancements and new research. You could be deemed brain dead in California and life support could be withdrawn. But the same patients, when moved to New Jersey, gets a fresh waiting period for more than 4 years on life support on grounds of religious objections. So in simple terms, the write-up in Nature magazine talks about how the definition of death and the rules regarding life support can vary from one state to another in the US. This means that someone could be considered legally dead in one state like California, but still considered alive in another state like New Jersey. The article highlights that the criteria of determining if a person is dead or alive, especially in situations where life support is involved, can be different depending on the state's laws and regulations. In California, someone might be declared brain dead based on medical criteria, and life support could be removed. However, if the same patient is moved to New Jersey, they might be granted a waiting period on life support due to religious objections raised by the patient's family or community. So this discrepancy shows that the law and regulations related to life and death might not keep up with advancements in science and technology or new research findings. As a result, different states might have different rules, causing variations in how life and death are legally determined in certain situations. This can create complex and sometimes conflicting situations for patients, families, and medical professionals as they navigate the legal, ethical aspects of life support and end-of-life care. End-of-life care, also known as a palliative care or a hospice care, refers to medical, emotional, and practical support provided to individuals who are approaching the end of their life due to a serious illness or terminal condition. The primary focus of end-of-life care is to ensure that the patient's experience is the highest possible quality of life during their final days. With such differences in the definition of death in just one country, imagine what it could be like in some nearly 200 countries and more cultures across the world. It can be daunting, even a traumatic task, to certify that a person is dead. Another spin of confusion is whether when a person is declared clinically dead, it is ethical to remove their healthy organs for purpose of organ transplant for others who need to receive organs in order to stay alive. So an interesting aspect of death is the many phrases and words, even euphemism, sometimes irreverent too, that are used to convey that a person is dead. Consider the phrase, "he kicked the bucket." The story is that bucket refers to the yoke that held pigs by the heels during slaughter in England. The spasm when in death throes would hit the yoke like kicking the bucket. Etymological histories to tell stories gruesome or otherwise. Euphemism, a word used to avoid saying unpleasant words. The statement is highlighting an interesting aspects of language regarding how we refer to death using various phrases and words, often employing euphemism. Euphemism is a milder and less direct way of expressing something that might be considered harsh or unpleasant. People use euphemism for death to soften the impact or to show sensitivity towards the topic. The phrase "he kicked the bucket" is one such euphemism for death instead of directly saying that someone died. This expression implies that person has passed away in a more indirect or in a more indirect manner. It adds a light-hearted touch to the seriousness of death. The etymological meaning of the phrase "he kicked the bucket" traces back to historical practice. The story goes that in England during pig slaughtering, the animals were held by their heels using a yoke, which is called bucket, and when they died, their final spasm would cause them to kick the yoke or bucket. Hence, the phrase evolved to represent someone's death. Etymological histories of words and phrases often provide fascinating insights into their origins, and as the example illustrates, they can sometimes reveal gruesome or interesting historical practices. However, as language evolves, the original meaning of certain phrases might be forgotten, and euphemism can be adopted to convey complex or sensitive ideas in a more culturally accepted way. In summary, the use of euphemism for death, like "he kicked the bucket," shows how language can creatively navigate the topic of mortality with a mix of humor, historical references and cultural sensitivity. These expressions can carry interesting etymological histories that gives us a glimpse into the past while adding richness and diversity to our language. So the "when does one die" debate. When does one die debate, curiously, is open to many interpretations rather than the finality usually associated with death. A finality like the curtain coming down after a performance, or the snapping of the thread that tethers a kite. Tether, to tie. Current legal definition around the world generally allow for two types of death: when heart and respiratory function stop irreversible or not possible to change, and when crucial functions of the brain are lost. Historically, these two have been closely entwined, twisting something together. So these two have been closely entwined. Stop the heart and the brain is dead in minute. Stop the entire brain functioning and the heart stops beating. But medical advances in the 1950s, such as modern ventilators, meant that the two types of death could be separated, says the Nature report. Schrodinger's cat. Technically speaking, you could be alive or dead at the same time, creating a quantum superposition paradox, a situation impossible to understand because it contains two opposite facts, that is paradox. When you bring in the spiritual dimension of soul, the entire life-death matrix get transformed to another level, because then we are basically deathless, immortal, because the soul lives on even after the body dies. So matrix, the set of condition that provides a system in which something grows. So in this context, the term life and death matrix refers to the complex and interconnected relationship between the life and death, encompassing the physical, emotional, spiritual aspect of existence. When the spiritual dimension of the soul is introduced into this matrix, this brings about a scientific, a significant transformation in the way we perceive life and death. The spiritual dimension introduces the concept of the soul, which is believed to be the immortal essence of a person that exists beyond the physical body. According to the perspective, when the physical body dies, the soul continues to live on, transcending the limitation of mortality. The soul is seen as eternal, deathless, and its existence extends beyond the temporary confines of life on earth. In the context of the spiritual dimension, the notion of death becomes less definitive and final. Instead of being viewed as the end of existence, death is seen as a transition or a passage to another realm or state of being. It is considered to be a shift from physical world to spiritual plane, where the soul continues its journey. By acknowledging the spiritual dimension of the soul, the concept of immortality comes into play. Immortality refers to the eternal nature of the soul, which is believed to persist beyond the temporal life of the physical body. This understanding of immortality provides solace and comfort, as it suggests that the essence of who we are continues to exist even after death. So in summary, when the spiritual dimension of the soul is integrated into life and death matrix, it introduces the idea of immortality and the continuity of life beyond physical death. It transforms our perception of death, offering a profound understanding of the enduring nature of the soul and its eternal connection to the spiritual realm. The term refers to the conceptual relationship between life and death, encompassing the various aspects and complexity of existence and mortality. So conceptual refers to the something related to ideas, concepts, understanding, rather than something tangible, real, physical. It implies that the relationship between life and death is not merely a physical connection, but involves the understanding and interpretation of these two states. Mortality refers to the state of being subject to death. The quality of being mortal, or the inevitability of death for all living beings. It signifies the fact that all living organisms, including humans, have a limited lifespans and will eventually die. So the phrase conceptual relationship between life and death, encompassing the various aspects and complexity of existence and mortality, means that it explores the abstract and intellectual connection between the state of being alive and being deceased. Consider the different facets and intricacies of existence and the understanding of mortality that applies to all living beings. I hope you must have enjoyed my today's topic, Flummoxed, by Flatlines, Sci-tech and Buckets, the speaking tree. Thank you so much.